Let's
There
get
you.
this started. I'll introduce you. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Michael Troy here. So excited today. Have the pleasure of the company of a man who needs no introduction, but I will give him anyway. The father of Dragon, the one of the founders of Image Comics, an amazing artist, and just like a legend in the comic book industry. Erik Larsen, thank you for being here, or being
Sure.
there rather. So when I say I'm a lifelong fan, I really am. Like I didn't know about like independent comic books at the time, so I didn't have any of your like mega stuff or any of those little self-published things. But I feel like the first time I saw your art was like in Teen Titans Spotlight with AQUALAD, and
Oh, okay.
so was that one of your first works for DC, maybe, or?
Yeah, that was pretty early on. I had an editor over at DC who was kind of championing my stuff. That was Mike Gold, and he thought I would be a good guy to be doing the Teen Titans. So that's what he was. He was like, "Oh, let's get this guy on all sorts of Teen Titans stuff. He'll be great on Teen Titans." And I don't think Marv Wolfman was having it at all. So it was, but I got to do a couple issues of Teen Titans Spotlight. I got to do the secret origin of Nightwing over in Secret Origins. And then I did do an issue of the Teen Titans with Paul Levitz, I think, wrote that issue. So it wasn't with Marv. And then I had drawn an issue of Adventures of Superman with Marv, and I don't think he was too impressed. So it is what
Um,
it is.
I think you did okay without Marv Wolfman. So, I mean, but then it eventually led to Doom Patrol, which I freaking loved. And it's funny because I think you had mentioned in the interview how it was kind of ill, or maybe just other research I did, but it was a little ill received at first, probably because it was such a departure from
Oh
the
yeah,
Steve
yeah,
Lytle style.
very much so.
And I personally loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is so punk rock. This is so cool. I love it. I loved all the new characters that came in, the chick with the big red hair. And there was a guy with a mohawk. I can't even remember, but
There's a bunch
and
of it was a fun enough book to do. I was kind of surprised how much uh, leeway I was given just right out of the gate, and just like, hey, do you have any characters you'd like to use? And I was like, oh, I've got this shrapnel character that I made up. Want to put him in? And he was in there almost immediately. I was like, geez, man. It just seemed a little weird to me that it would be, yeah, let's collaborate immediately. And what ideas do you have? It's like, wow, okay. I guess that's how we're doing comic. I thought he would be more, let me cram in everything I always wanted to do about the Doom Patrol right away and run through all their rogues gallery immediately. But he gave me a little time to kind of mess around and come up with some of my own stuff. And so that was all right.
it's been like a great growing experience as a younger artist, and to get but I think like then it would be kind of like I get, because it's like I'm so far removed from it, but as an artist myself, like I would love to draw the X-Men, but I would hate to draw the X-Men today. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Because they're
yeah.
so different from the characters that I love. Like
Well,
I can
that's the thing with all this stuff is you don't necessarily get to choose what you get to do. My very first Spider-Man story I did was a fill-in right when they had no idea who the regular artist was going to be. Ron Friends had just left the book. I'm not sure what the reason there was, but he was off. Alan Kupperberg was doing some fill-ins, and they threw me in the midst of all that. I did it, and it was Spider-Man in his black and white costume, It was like, that's not what I want to draw. That's not the Spider-Man I knew and loved. And people look back at it now and think fondly of it. But at the time, it was like, I want to draw the real Spider-Man. Come on, man. But you don't get
And
to
it's a,
choose, It's like this, it is what it is. So you just have to do what you can with it. Try to do the best.
yeah, so it's funny. Another thing that I thought of listening to you talk is that I feel like you, even though you were primarily an artist, you really have proven yourself to be quite a writer. And was Spider-Man the solo book the first thing you wrote in like mainstream comics, or had you written
The
before that?
the well, I mean, I contributed to plots and stuff, but the first thing I wrote was a Marvel Comics Presents story, which had Spider-Man and Wolverine. That was Marvel Comics Presents 48 through 50.
In my mind now that you mention it. But yeah, I liked Marvel Comics Presents. I felt like so many great things came out of that, and it seemed like such a great place for things like that, like an artist to get a
Yeah,
chance to
yeah,
write.
it was nice. It's a little bite-sized piece of something where you could just do 8 pages of something. I think they kind of did end up handing out a lot of scripts to people who weren't necessarily ready for prime time. Let me say it that way. And so, or just people didn't care that much about, and that became something of a problem where you'd have issues where you go, oh, there's 4 different stories in here, but everybody's just doing 8 pages, and 3 of those are by people I don't even care about. And so eventually they were just going, let's just put Wolverine in every issue because doing it with
Yeah.
Cyclops as the main character isn't drawing in as much of an audience as we like. So,
Well, universe, Cyclops is as popular as Wolverine, don't you think? I mean, I
no, that wasn't happening.
appreciate the irony of asking you on Doom Patrol if you have any characters in your pocket or whatever, because it seems like you're probably one of the most prolific like character creators. Like when Dragon came out, like just like all these cool villains and just like supporting characters. And I mean, I know a lot of them were around for, since your childhood, but I love what you did with your arm of Image Comics, because it seems like you had pointed out that you didn't really have a house style, and I thought, well, that's really interesting because it's like, I can name like a few Jim Lee clones, well, a million Jim Lee clones, Rob Liefeld clones, Mark Silvestri perhaps, but there really are no Erik Larsen clones that I can think of, and it's because I feel like your style is like so distinct unto you. I mean, you have certain, like, I see a lot of like Kirby and your, just your bombastic action and energy. But other than that, it's, I can't really think of an artist who's like, oh, that's an Erik Larsen clone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciated like the wide range of art that you used. You used a lot of my favorite artists like Jason Pearson and Adam Hughes, and just like different things like that. You weren't trying to do like Freak Force. You got Vic Bridges, who is a John Byrne clone, but he's not an Erik Larsen clone. So I thought
Yeah.
that was like very cool. But I guess you couldn't have even really done a house style if you wanted to.
No, not really. I mean, I could have been more like, I'm looking for guys who draw like me, but who is out there that I could even tap for that sort of thing?
And, and then that speaks to what like the argument of like comics, Marvel Comics Presents. It's like, why would I want like a main Dragon book by Larson and then a couple of sister books by shitty Larson ripoffs, or knockoffs? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like, I can't believe it's not Erik Larsen. I would just like, I feel like I felt like that way in some of like the maybe I shouldn't say it, but anyway, I just feel like some of the other books like just seemed like, like just like
Oh,
a
yeah, I know.
disappointment compared to the main
I'm
titles.
aware of what we published.
I mean, there was brilliance, and I feel like 90s comics are kind of getting their due now. They're like kind of, I guess they already mined all the other comic properties, so now they're, trying to do the 90s, and they're actually going up in value. So that'll be a miracle to walk into a comic store and not see a dollar bin full of 90s comics, but I don't know. I mean, of course, they were way overprinted at the
But
time.
they were ordered in abundance because everybody was going to become a millionaire. It was like, oh, these are investments. I'm going to buy a case of these, and it's like, yeah, if you're getting a case of Death Blow, I got some bad news for you. It's like that character not only isn't being published now, but nobody remembers who the hell he was. It's like that's not so great. As an investor.
Another thing I appreciate about the way you publish is like you're always willing to do like fun sort of like different things that are experimental, like your 24-hour comic book. And one of my recent discoveries, I don't know how I missed the boat the first time around, but the giant size Kung Fu Bible stories. This freaking blew my mind. First of all, I love that you did a treasury. I love that I found it at a decent price too. And I love that it's not dragon. Like this story in here is so good. Like the art is just so beautiful. The writing is amazing. I love, and another thing I want to talk to you about is your double page spreads. You're like the master of the double page spread. And this is just gorgeous. Like it's not even action or anything. It's just like the best exposition shot ever in this old haunted mansion. And and you're working on boards still, right? You're done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thank God.
And those were giant boards. Those were like I was working twice up. So yeah, that stuff is huge.
How in the hell do they even scan art when it's twice up? I always wondered that. Like,
I scan it in pieces and piece it all together. Photoshop has something in it called photo merge, where it'll take pieces of different things and assemble it.
Yeah,
it's not always beautiful when it comes out through that. There'll be a little jags here and there, but you can come in and manually smoothen out some of that stuff afterward. But yeah, that got to be a little bit crazy when I started doing like double page spreads that were twice up. It was like, how am I going to even make this work? They're so crazy big.
What did you get yourself into? I know, like, you should do like a mural in your house or something like that. Just like, I mean, actually, like a huge dragon mural by Erik Larsen would not be the worst thing to ever happen. But I mean, I'm guessing things like this are just more like sort of novelty and stuff. I mean, like, it's like not sustainable to do like a whole series.
Oh no, not at all. That thing didn't sell very well,
that bums me out. I'm like, it's such a crime.
Yeah, it's like
we sold like gangbusters.
Yeah, we made no money on that. So it was like everybody working on it essentially didn't get paid. So it's like,
and it's like you have Bruce Timm. What more do you need to sell the damn thing?
Yeah, it's like Bruce Timm and Ryan Otley and all sorts of guys. It's like, oh man,
Warren, Art Adams doing sexy Ursula
doing
from
like great
Little Mermaid.
Stuff.
This great story by Andy Kuhn is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Tom Scioli, shouldn't leave him out. I mean, it's
an awesome book. And then at one point, we're like, what do we do with all these copies of the book? We can't sell them. It's like, at some point we had to destroy a bunch of them because it's like there's no place to sell them. So it was kind of a shame. Yeah.
If I were a good video editor right now, I'd be like, oh.
Well, they've got it. The problem with a lot of this stuff is we have to pay for storage on it. And, so like Diamond sitting there charging us for storing all this stuff. And if it's not active inventory that's actually moving, you kind of have to do the math and go, oh, it's not worthwhile to keep all these copies of, whatever, just sitting there taking up space and paying rent on it all.
cool series that you did was, and it was such a departure too. And I'm guessing that people were kind of like WTF when it came out was the Dart miniseries by Joseph Sequeiros. It was like
Yeah,
such an
that was.
amazing artist. But I love that. I mean, of course, like I have different sensibilities, but you know, I'm so there for like high fashion looking art and Vogue Attack and all those. But I don't think we'll be seeing any of those villains again because I think they're Joseph
Well, they're not
destroyed.
mine. So
Yeah.
uh, in a lot of these cases, it's like this isn't it. You know, if you're creating a bunch of your own stuff and using them in my book, that's your stuff still. You know, so it's not, those aren't my toys to play with.
I know. I just came across this uh, issue of Dragon #3, and I noticed that it's still Bedrock on the cover and not
Yeah.
Bad Rock. And I thought, what the hell was he thinking? Like, why would he think that that wouldn't be a problem with the copyright? But um,
Yeah, that was right around the time that that Flintstones movie came out, and suddenly they got very litigious about all that stuff, which is why he ended up trying to having to change the name.
noticing the difference between the Dragon one of the miniseries that introduced the image title to the first issue of the regular series. And it's weird how it's like decidedly darker. I feel like the mood has like totally shifted. And then we have another thing that you knew
Yeah,
I was going
there
to
you
ask
go.
about, my beloved Freak Force. I am
Yeah,
like the biggest. I love team books though. I love Alpha Flight. I love the obscure teams. You know, your Doom Patrol. But I just thought the writing on this was so good, and the Vic Bridges art was so good. And it. I mean, we got like what 17, 18 issues. Like I
yeah.
thought that was
There was
very
18. So
that was pretty damn good. You know what I mean at the time. So will we, I mean, is there a chance that we would ever see Freak Force again? Or
well, they do appear in and out of the Savage Dragon book. It's just that it's difficult because Savage Dragon doesn't sell a bazillion copies to begin with. So, but because it's all me, you know, writing, penciling, inking, I don't need to make a bazillion dollars doing the comic. I've already made a bazillion dollars. I can just kind of not even worry about it. But in a situation like a Freak Force, I'd have to hire a creative team. You know, even if I was writing it myself, I certainly can't be drawing it myself and inking it myself. So I'd have to get other people involved. And at which point it's like, well, this book better sell way better than Savage Dragon, and the chances of that happening are pretty much none. So it makes it very difficult. So
it's your my other new favorite book, and like this is so good. And like props to you for like doing two books at a time. I mean, I know obviously it's impossible to keep up with the monthly
yeah,
schedule, and
that's
you've
for
been
sure.
you were sort of hit by the I think paper demand and supplies kind of screwed
There's
up
all sorts of
comics a little
stuff that's
bit.
going on. Yeah,
But I
and
have to say, like I really love what you've done with the character. I mean, I feel like Mario Goli's creation, like he laid a lot of great foundation, but a lot of it was like really crazy, disjointed, and all over the place. And the way you're combining everything to sort of make sense and add your own elements. And but I feel like what the secret of the book is, like it's a really good classic superhero book. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I just think it's like that, you know, it's like you've got guest stars, you've got cool ass villains. I mean, she really does have cool villains. And I love the art, like the pared down style that you've done, obviously for time constraints with a little less, you know,
Well,
noodling and hatching and everything.
it's such a mixed bag in terms of that style, because you have to really think of things in a very different way. Because like in a regular comic, I could do a splash page that was like Malcolm's face, you know, like a big splash of Malcolm's face looking at you. And because it's such a rendered style, you could still look at it and go, oh, there's a lot of visual interest in that face because of what I'm doing line work wise. Well, I can't do that in Ant. If I did a full page picture of just her face, it would look like nothing. It would be so empty. There'd be so little line work and so much stuff there that you can't really get away with that. So what I'm finding is I've got to approach things different storytelling wise. The way I can lay out a page, the kinds of shots I can use are end up being very different. And so it ends up being a kind of a challenge in its own way, where you're sitting there going, oh, I got to draw an explosion. Well, how do I draw an explosion in this style? I'm used to dragging a razor blade through it and putting all this black and line work and all this other stuff. I don't have those tools in this style. So what does an explosion look like here? And it gets much more complicated than you would think.
Like I never thought of that kind of thing, but I guess those are the types of uh, things that pop up when you know, and during the process.
Yeah.
I mean, in the mime, come on, that's such a great character. I mean, when's the last time you heard a mime mentioned in pop culture?
A lot of the early villains here are Mario Gully villains. So the mime is Jessica Mime was the Mario Gully villain. There's a couple that are in the fourth issue that are Mario Gully villains too. I'm just kind of getting them all in there right away, just to go, okay, well, these are the early ones and these are the ones. So the first 4 issues in particular, I'm really covering Mario's run as best I can. And then there's still a couple more characters that are going to be reintroduced there. And then I start dumping in tons of my own stuff. So
the chick on the cover of issue 5 looks really cool. I'm looking forward to that issue. The blue one. I feel like she's appeared before, but I'm sort of sketch about my recollection.
I'm kind of covering some ground of other things I've done too. So she was in Fantastic Comics, that comic I did a million years ago, and also she's in an issue of Spawn. So
whatever you're doing, it's amazing. Keep it up. I love it. 30 years of Image Comics. That's so crazy, isn't it? And another cool thing,
pretty nuts to think about.
I know, because it's like, in a way, it's like, they were the new kids on the block for so long, and it, compared to Marvel and DC, in a way, I guess it still feels that way sometimes. But 30 years is nothing to sneeze at. Another fun book that you just did is the Super Freaks.
That thing was completely out of my hands. Those guys were a bunch of guys. They do a podcast called the Savage Fincast, and so there's this group of guys, and they've been doing this podcast for 10 years, and they were like, we want to do something to celebrate 10 years of our podcast. They wanted to do is, let's just have listeners and fans of the book. We're going to produce this comic, and they were going to self-publish it with my blessing. And it would just have been a few copies that were circulated in and amongst the group. And then they showed it to me, and I was like, oh, we got to print this thing. It's so awesome.
The kind of enthusiasm for comic books that makes you so awesome. Like, I mean, that is kind of unprecedented to do that, but it's really actually good. I mean, I love the splash page. The Raven Perez art is just astonishing. But there's a lot of great things in here. It
runs the gamut. There's some stuff that is really great, and there's stuff there that's like, all right, this is not as strong. But I didn't want to be like throwing bodies around either. Be like, oh, you are not worthy, and you are. So it's like, look, this is the book you made. It's either publish it or not. And I'm like, let's go for it. So my only contribution in any of that was I did go through and make sure some of the lettering was a little more legible than it was when it was lettered, and fixed up some of those spelling mistakes and stuff. So I was just basic editing stuff. But other than that, it was really hands-off.
Requested someone to ink your cover, and I think it looks really good. Like I
That
was trying to
was
think, I'm like March.
commission that I had done that was just in pencil form, and so they had just, I don't even know who inked it, but they had found it online and traced it off and inked it. So it wasn't like I drew that for the book. It was just here's something that they found online and turned into a cover.
Seltzer. And but I was like, I can't remember the last time someone else inked you. I mean, you've inked your own stuff since day one. Well, and before that, like on Spider-Man, like it's pretty much when you started inking your own stuff, I think, right?
Yeah, on that. But I've, a little bit here and there. I did a short run on Amazing Spider-Man. Oof, God, how many years ago now? Oh, that's probably 20 years ago. Good Lord. I did the Defenders and I did 3 issues of Thor that Klaus Janson inked, and 3 issues of Spider-Man that John Beatty inked. But it's like, yeah, that's that. Every now and then, it's like you do the math, and it's like, holy crap, that was 20 years ago. What the hell?
I know. Um, I love the Defenders, by the way. That was so good. I always loved when you sort of dipped your toe back into Marvel or DC, like you mentioned Thor. And did you just write Aquaman, or you drew that as well?
I just wrote it. I did the covers for the first 3 issues, I think, and then I did design some characters who appeared in the book. So like Lagoon Boy and that group of characters were designed by me before the book was started.
We would ever see you return to Marvel or DC. I feel like the ship's kind of sailed, but I would love to see like you do Captain Marvel, Shazam, or I was trying to think like who else? I don't know.
I think the chances at this point are fairly remote, because I'm sitting here trying
Things
to
are so different now.
I'm trying. It's not even that. It's just that I'm trying to do Savage Dragon and Ant at the same time, and it's like, oh, you want to take on something else? Holy crap, no.
I love the fact that you do this like less detailed style to save time. So then you decide to color the book. Which is really good. Like I love the colors. I feel like it's like such an important part of the whole aesthetic of the book. Like I'm so glad you did it. Like I feel like it brings something to the book that I don't think somebody else could have brought to it.
Yeah, I love doing it. I love coloring. I like that whole process. And I'll be experimenting somewhat more with color as it goes along. But yeah, the 5th issue I just colored, and I love knockouts. I don't know that everybody's thrilled with that, where you just will take a character and be like, well, this isn't their natural color, but I'm just going to color them solid blue because it works for this panel, and I'm going to make the background yellow, and I'm going to do this and do that. There's a period that Marvel used to do that back in the early 60s, when they would just knock characters out on different colors, just as a way of breaking up the color on a page. So it wasn't, oh, the Thing is orange in every single panel here. Be like, you know what, we're just going to make him blue in this panel and green in this panel, just to break it up. The first 2 issues of the Incredible Hulk are a couple of my favorite color-wise comics, just because the colorist just went nuts and was doing all sorts of experimental stuff there. And so my 5th issue of Ant, I kind of went a little in that direction. And there's pages and pages where characters aren't their natural colors. Like, I'm just screwing around, kids. I hope you like it.
I like it, and I haven't even seen it yet, so I can't wait. Another really fun book that you did, and I know it was part of Dragon, but then you did it as a 0 issue, was North Force. Speaking of Alpha Flight, like I love that team. Like it's like such a like I feel like the thing of Erik Larsen I was thinking about because like there's always like the sort of freakish monster character on the team like Horridus or like you would have Nightcrawler on the X-Men or something like that. But in your books, you can always count on there to be like at least three or four like freaky monsters. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's really no babe or no hunk or anything. They, like one turns into a bear, one, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
they're just like fun characters. Will they be returning at any
Yeah,
point
they'll,
or?
they'll be back. They'll be back. That one was, yeah, that one was kind of fun to put together. And I just kind of went with Canadian sports teams is actually where all those names came from. It was like, I want him to, what I didn't want to do is too often with those kind of characters, what ends up happening is they'll go, oh, they're from Ireland. Let's do Shamrock. Oh, they're from, where it really seems like we got to do Shamrocks and Leprechauns if somebody's from Ireland. And with Canada, you'd be like, oh, we got to get a hockey puck character and one on the flag and one related to this. And they're very regional characters. And so I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to go more the route of the Avengers, where you just go, okay, well, what inherently American is there about Iron Man or the Scarlet Witch or Quicksilver or, So I wanted it to be a little bit more of that. So a character like Grizzly, going, well, there's bears all over the place. There's nothing inherently Canadian about Grizzly or, the character named Jet. And it's like, well, we've got jets. Why is this a Canadian character? So I'm trying to make it a little more like that instead of it just being totally regional. But anyway, I had fun with it. I like some of the characters. There's a fun stuff to do. So they'll be back just in some form.
Your twists, like having Mighty Man be the nurse in Freak Force, like that was surprising. I love Mighty Man. I love Dart. I feel like Dart is like the Donna Troy or the Jean Grey of the Erik Larsen universe. Like people love her, and you keep killing her and just like doing horrible things to her. I like that double page spread of her being shot in the head. I was just like, oh my god, this is so gorgeously drawn and horrifying at the same time.
Yeah. Well, some of those characters too, I do like the idea of there being sort of a generational quality to them, where it's just like, all right, well, this is now the son of that character and the daughter of that character. And let's just take it from there. Like right now, Mighty Man's secret identity is Anne Stevens' daughter. So it's like a little girl who's changing into an adult superhero.
To have like a legacy character, considering be the daughter, considering like the gender thing going on there. So genius. I know it's funny because now is that, it's like you do have the legacy, like Malcolm Dragon is the current dragon and everything like that. So does Dragon age in real time? Is he like, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
is Rapture's 50 years old now?
Yeah, everybody ages, and that ends up being a problem for some of these characters, where suddenly it's like, oh, here's this character is 50. Are they still going to be running around doing what they were doing when this book started? Because when we started off the title, I think Barbaric was 19. But it's like, well, he was 19 in 1993, so he's got to be pretty close to 50 at this point. Is he still going to be able to do the sort of thing that he was able to do early on? And at this point, it's like, how long can I even keep Super Patriot realistically alive? Because it's like, oh crap, the
It's,
guy's over
you
100.
know, I mean, he could be enhanced or cloned or something. There's always a way in comic
Yeah,
books.
there's
I
always a
mean,
way.
what else is there? Oh, Dragon Blood and Guts. I love Jason Pearson's art. He's like one of my absolute favorite artists. And I love this series so much. You have so many great like old like miniseries and different things. Would you ever do collections or like an omnibus of like non-Erik Larsen?
Possibly at one point. There does occasionally get to be problems where the film is lost and colors need to be recreated. And that's been the problem with some early Savage Dragon stuff. We're finally going to do a color collection of that, but of the early issues of Savage Dragon. But the problem has been that those issues have been lost. So and it's just been madness with the 90s and the way things were at the time. Storing everything where every file was huge and you could store 2 pages on a disk, and people were like trying to save money by recycling the discs and recording new stuff on them and stuff like that. So a lot of the color files ended up being sent to some other country where they were being translated into another language, and then those discs were never sent back. And so you end up with missing issues here and there. And so then we had to go, okay, well, we got to recolor it again. Well, how expensive is that we got to recolor, 9, 10, 15 issues worth of stuff? Just, it's a lot of stuff, and it's a big investment to go, let's get this stuff into print again.
I guess as a one-man show, a lot of it's just a huge pain in the ass. Not even work.
It's a huge pain in the ass. And
I mean, if you had a team of people,
Yeah, and I just want to make comics. It's like I don't want to bother with any of this crap, but somebody needs to bother with it.
And really, thank you and congratulations. And it's awesome that you've just continued to keep doing it for all this time. You found your corner, you found your character. It's like, like how Charles Schultz did Peanuts for his career. I mean, obviously, you have a lot other things going on, but it's like it makes me happy that you've been doing this for so long and so consistently, because it's like I feel like we really missed out like on a lot of like Todd McFarlane's Spawn, or I don't know, other creators sort of just did other things and kind of not really abandoned, but because Spawn's been consistently coming out and he's had a lot of resurgence and stuff. I mean, I guess it depends on the character and the creator. So,
yeah,
but I just think
it varies a lot. I mean, some of the guys didn't come into this wanting to do their same character forever. Some guys were like, oh, I got some great ideas for superheroes, but not necessarily great ideas for villains. And then that kind of trailed off. It's a mixed bag, and other people are just interested in doing other stuff, which is, I mean, that's fine.
I mean, I guess, creatively speaking, and obviously within, your own dragon, it's like, that's probably why you introduce Malcolm and do all this stuff. It's like, how do you keep it interesting to you for 30 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
keep
definitely. Definitely have to keep moving things around and keep introducing characters that make it fun, And then even so, I'm running into this now where I'm sitting there going, oh, I got another funeral to draw. Holy crap, man, I've drawn like 15 of these. And trying to find
with comics, everyone's dropping like flies.
Well, I mean, there's that, and there's just how many of those locations you're going to draw again and again, like, oh, I'm getting sick of drawing their apartment, or I'm just getting sick of drawing this thing. How do I mix things up? What do people actually do? What can I have them realistically doing? And then you read other comics like, oh, they're just hanging out at home all the goddamn time. I could do that, but I don't know. It's a challenge to keep things moving and keep things interesting for you know, both the writer and the artist who are sitting there trying to do this stuff.
And issue 300 will be here before you know it. How crazy
Oh.
is that? I mean, obviously, you got to have some sort of crazy big ass funeral cooked up for that.
Jeez. Not more funerals.
Please don't. Yeah, maybe you should start doing births instead of funerals.
Yeah.
But we've seen that too.
Well, we've seen that too. That's the thing. It's like, what haven't I done? It's a real head scratcher to come up with different approaches and different things. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll do a bunch of issues in Dimension X so I don't have to, so I can at least be dealing with alien type stuff. So that might be an approach.
Dragon is just around the corner, right?
I'm having fun. I'm managing to keep myself entertained one way or another.
It's you know, Image obviously one of the huge things back in the day, and not just Image, but 90s. You know, like the alternate covers, and that's really coming back in a big way. I understand why they do it, and I think it's great because I think it's good for like the comic shops and the industry. But I know the funny thing is, like, your Aunt Harriet covers, like, you'll just do like the logo blue instead, or one logo blue and one green, and I'm just like, of course I chose the blue. But what is your philosophy behind like such a simple distinction like that?
Well, I was wanting to do like I mean, I grew up, I'm a child of the 70s, so basically what I wanted to do was a version that would have the, I mean, would have the old circle and the banner across the top. It's like, this is what comic books looked like when I was a kid. And then this is like, this is just standard Image comics. That's no good. but this was it. When I was a kid, it was just like this. I started doing this on Savage Dragon some years ago, and it was sort of like the first time it felt like, oh, I'm doing real comics. This is what comics look like. I remember these. And so that was kind of that was really what it was, is I just want to have some of these for myself because I just love the look of it. So that was the thought. But there'll be some alternate covers by other people too. I mean, whenever there's an anniversary issue rolls around, I usually will do something with some other guys. And I just traded with a bunch of different people. So like there's a Gary Frank cover that's coming up on Savage Dragon, and there's a few others that are on the way, because it'll be, you know, because people will ask me to do covers for them. And so I've kind of been doing trades where it's like, all right, I'll do one for you if you do one for me.
That's a great idea. I like that. I like that sort of communal aspect of comic books and mutual admiration. Another interesting variant you did, I think it was Dragon though. It's Jack Morelli lettered one issue and somebody else lettered the same issue.
Yeah. that was an interesting one. Basically what happened there was my other letterer, we parted company, we'll just put it that way. He had decided that he couldn't it was taking him too long to letter Dragon because he was doing this retro style, and he was like, I need to be paid like twice as much as I'm being paid. And it was just like, I just can't do it. So he was like, my rate needs to be bumped up by this much. And then for covers, I want 3 times that rate. And for splash pages, I want twice that rate. And it ended up being nearly twice what I was paying him. And it just was like, you know, Dragon sales are decent. It's making a profit, but it's not making such a crazy profit that I want my letterer to be being paid more than me, you know? It just seemed like
A good rule.
at some point, this is like, come on, man, I'm putting in a lot. You're putting in a lot of work. I get that, but I'm putting in way more work than you are. So what happened with this particular one was I was, so he had we got to that point where it's like, all right, this isn't going to work. So I needed to get a new letterer on the book. And then what happened there was, oh, now I'm blanking on the name. And I hate to be blanking on the name of the other letterer. Oh, I feel bad about that. So I got somebody else working on the book. And it was a guy that had I don't know if he'd done an issue before or whatever, but somehow or other, I got him working. He'd started lettering the issue, and he got a good way into it. And then I was at a comic store and found an issue of something that Jack Morelli had lettered, and it was like, oh, he's kind of doing that 1960s thing that I liked that Farron Delgado was doing on the book. So it's like, well, let me try him out and see if he does a better job or a different job or more like what I was picturing in my head. So then it was like, oh, I'll have him do a few pages. And I go, well, you keep going too. And then it got to this point where I was like, I've got the two versions of it. Let's just print them both. I'm already doing this old 70s style logos, and I'm already doing the other one. So let's just do alternate ones where it's just two different lettering and see how that goes. And I thought it was fun, and it is definitely interesting to be able to compare the two. And I do like having there be occasions where the two different versions of the book will have something that's different about them, where it's like, oh, this issue, there's no swearing. It's all squiggly things. And in this one, we're using the actual swear words or other various things. I've done a few alternate issues where I did alternate interiors as well. I did there's issue 17. I did that where there was a shower scene with Dragon and Rapture. And in one version, you're just seeing the shower door and smoke coming out of the door from the bathroom. And in the other version, you're actually seeing the two characters in their loving embrace. It's like
I hope I got that version.
Yeah, well, they're different. There's two different versions of 17. There's two different versions of 31 where God appears, and in one, I have him saying, "Don't fuck with God," and the other, it's like, "Don't," and it's some pretend curse word kind of thing. It was like at the time the book was being sold to kids more, so it's like I got to make a kid-friendly issue. But
well, since you brought it up, I know because I had stopped collecting regular monthly comics, and I had at one point I had gotten away from Dragon, and then I picked up an issue and there was this naked woman throughout the whole thing, and I was like, wow, this is really going in a different direction than what I was used to. Clearly the kids angle is kind of gone. I mean, but it's kind of weird to think of Dragon has that appeal, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it a kid's book. It's always been, kind of adult thematically, even though there was a cartoon and toys and everything.
I was kind of pushing it real early on to be more sexual, really early on, but I wasn't showing any naughty bits. And then just at some point, it was just like, it says it's a mature book. What can't I do? It turns out that there is stuff I can't do, but all right. So I'm cooling it somewhat, but whatever.
It's your book, you do whatever the heck you want with it.
I kind of treat the book like like nobody is reading and nobody's paying attention, and certainly nobody in my family is, so I can get away. You know, it's like
the best thing to do. You should never be like beholden to your audience or whatever. And it's interesting because it's like, yeah, I was gonna say like, you know, you've made it when your fan base has a nickname like fanatics. So it's like, you know, Taylor Swift has her Swifties, and Justin Bieber has his Believers, and so Eric Dragon has his fanatics. So that's definitely like something cool. But that said, it's like, you know, obviously you have a good rapport with your fan base, having published their fan book and all that stuff, and you seem fairly involved on the internet. One of the things that I love you do is you'll like show a picture of like something, and then you'll be like, this is what's wrong with it. Like I think you just did one about drawing children recently, like,
oh, good
and
Lord.
it's true, children are, you know, notoriously hard to draw, and there are a lot of mistakes, but I think that's great. Like it's kind of like free art lessons and art advice from like a veteran professional. So, and it's like, and that's just you killing time online, I guess, right?
Well, I think part of it is wanting to have there be something of that rapport with your audience. And then part of it is just me just needing to get this stuff out of my system, you know, where I'll see something and be like, oh, here's a little lesson I can teach people. I mean, a part, you know, my dad was a teacher, and so I've got some of that sort of teacher stuff ingrained in me. Uh, and I kind of, you know, I've always liked those books, those how to draw books and how to, but I've never had the time to sit down and go, oh, let's figure this whole thing out. So I have an album that I just started called Comics 101 on Facebook. And I just started, you know, when there would be something that would show up that I could go, oh, here's something that people ought to know about. Let me tackle this subject. And a lot of it's simple comic stuff. Um, you know, there are advantages and disadvantages to the medium that we have. And it's like, well, what are the advantages and what are those disadvantages? And let's talk about it and see if maybe we can figure out a way to do comics better than we've been doing them, you know?
It's funny. I think one of the weird things about comics is, and especially in I guess recent decades, is I feel like they have this need to like be cinematic and sort of like be movie like in a way,
Mhm.
and they sort of have lost focus on like so a lot of the stuff that makes comics so great. Like now I have to get that ant variant because you pointed out the spotlight, and I'm like, oh yeah, I freaking love that too. You know what I mean? It's like there's no thought balloons, there's hardly any captions anymore. It
Yeah.
takes like 5 seconds to read a comic book because I don't. They want this pacing for because they're planning it as like a 5 part trade paperback. Whereas back in the day, you know, I could go pay 60 cents and take 20 minutes, probably 40 for me, because I was always like hypnotized by the art, but just really have a fulfilling comic book. And I just think that, you know, it's like everybody's working on Procreate and all the doing all these effects that just look like effects to me. And just, you know, it's like, so thank you for keeping classic comic book things alive, you know? Uh,
Well, there's
and
a lot of things that people, I think that creators aren't necessarily thinking about when they're sitting down to create comics. You know, when you've got, you know, the fact that you're turning the page, and then once you turn that page, you're seeing scenes ahead because you've got panels that are, you know, like, oh, there's 6 panels on this page and there's 4 panels on that. I'm seeing 10 panels ahead just by turning that page. And that writers aren't necessarily thinking, I better not have there be a surprise, uh, you know, deep into a page of a book, because readers are going to see that immediately. It's like we want the surprise of the villain to be, you turn the page and then you see him, rather than, oh, he appears on panel 4, like, oh, there he is. You can't do some of the scare cuts that you can do in live action movies. You can do things that jump out at you. It's really hard to pull a lot of that stuff off in comics. So then you have to think about, okay, well, what are the tools at my disposal? What can I do that they can't do? And there does seem to be this thing where we're going, well, let's eliminate a lot of these really helpful tools because they don't do those in the movies. It's like, no, captions are good. Captions can set the scene. Captions can tell us what a room smells like, without having the characters go, oh, ew, it smells in here. Sound effects are good. You don't have to have a character saying the phone's ringing and you don't hear anything. That just seems crazy to me.
Could you imagine like early Spider-Man without thought balloons? It would be horrible.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff that you can't do when you don't have access to the inner workings of somebody's head. Like, if somebody is lying to you, how do you know that if it's just dialogue? If they've got a thought balloon saying, their ulterior motives and whatever, the fool, he'll buy anything I say, whatever. It's like, okay, that makes it a whole different thing. That gives you a level that we don't have. And yes, it can be abused, where characters are just inner monologuing to a point where you're just going, nobody would ever actually think that. That's not the way thoughts work. But that's a tool that we've got. Use that tool. Sound effects are a tool. Use that tool. Captions, a beautifully written caption is, that's an awesome thing. And footnotes letting readers know, hey, by the way, that happened in issue 6. Check it out. It's like, okay, thanks for that, man. I'll go look that up. It's all helpful.
With She-Hulk coming out, wouldn't it be a great time to do like some great She-Dragon annual or one shot or something to cash in on the
I don't know about that. I mean, at this point, there is no She-Dragon, so I would have to.
Did you kill my beloved She-Dragon?
She was depowered, issue 154, I think, 155, some time ago. And she had kind of outgrown her initial idea. The problem with real time is that eventually you go, oh, this teenager who idolizes this superhero and wants to emulate him and is using his name, eventually she's not a teenager anymore, and eventually she's in her 40s, and that just doesn't work, especially now that your hero is dead. So
the neurotic girlfriend isn't as cute when you're
yeah, when you're in your 50s, it's like, oh, this is just sad. But that's an advantage too, because you can transition into other stuff. And but you can see so many different TV shows and stuff like that where they tried to transition from one thing to another and just failed spectacularly. And that is a tough thing to pull off. Why can't Seinfeld turn into Mad About You? Couldn't he have found a girl that would be the perfect girl? And now suddenly we're doing, hey, it's now they're married and now we're exploring a bunch of different things. No, I haven't really seen TV shows pull that sort of thing off, beyond soap operas, which that's kind of their gig. But we don't really get that with TV shows. With TV shows, as soon as there's, no, Mork married Mindy and now they're going to have a kid, it's like, this sucks now.
Opera stars never age, though. They just apply more makeup.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that well, that's the sort of thing they're running into the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that comic book characters may never grow old, but real live actors sure as hell do, And if you're casting somebody who's 40 years old, guess what? 10 years they're going to be 50, and unless you're going to start casting everybody in their 20s, you're not going to be able to get a huge amount of movies out of them where they're in fighting fit, where they can actually do this stuff. So that's going to become a problem. Like, do we just abandon Iron Man forever, or do we at some point go, hey, here comes Iron Man from another dimension, and he's a young version of the Iron Man that we knew, and he's going to settle in on this world, and we're going to take it from here.
Do you have any plans for Dragon 300 thought out yet, or are you still figuring that out?
There's always stuff. I've got a big thing I'm working towards, but the question is always, do I kick the can down the road for that long, or do I jump into this story that I'm really excited about now because I'm really excited about it, And then it would become, okay, well, now what do I do for 300? We've also got 275 coming up at some point, and it's like, is that a big deal anymore? Or I've been kind of doing 100-page issues every 25, and it's at a certain point, it's like, oh Jesus, man, this is killing me.
I'm like, you certainly are glutton for punishment, aren't you?
Oh, I know. It's like so much stuff that I just love it. It's the problem. I just am like, oh, I love those old DC 100-page super spectaculars. I always loved those as a kid. It would be like, oh, I gotta get, I've got some back there somewhere.
Marvel for sure, and I don't know if DC followed suit, but definitely Marvel. I feel like every 25th issue, you were getting like a double issue, and I was always totally excited about that. So
yeah, well, it depends on the book, but there were a couple double-sized issues of Daredevil when Frank Miller was doing it. There seems like there were double-sized issues of the X-Men all the time, starting with 137, I think, was the first one, and then they were like, okay, 150 rolls around, we got to make that one into a big one.
Yeah,
they 160. It seemed like every year they would do something like that. Remember Paul Smith did one, and a whole bunch of guys.
But issue 166 of the X-Men was Paul Smith's double issue. I love Paul Smith. It's funny, I feel like you don't really I don't associate you with the X-Men as much as I do like some of your other of the Image founders, because I guess you're more associated with Spider-Man in a way. But you do have, I mean, obviously you do have X-Men connections. So
there was a while that I was going to do an X Factor story for Marvel Comics Presents at one point. I'd started drawing it, and my house burned down, so that was the end of that.
Well, I know that, and you lost a ton of original art in that fire, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. A ton of stuff that I'd collected, and a ton of my own art that I hadn't sold, and then whatever it is. There's nothing you can do about it except carry on.
It's a tragedy, but at least we still have the printed versions, I guess. Speaking of which, is something that came up that I wanted to briefly touch on, if nothing else, to put in my vote for it, is the possibility of an artist edition with the dragon. Like, totally have my vote on that. I know it would probably be hard to do and very time consuming, expensive, and things like that.
Yeah.
So just let Scott Dunbier do it at IDW.
it's like I own a publisher. It would be crazy for me to do an artist edition type thing anywhere other than at Image. Plus, I've got all the art here, you know. So
yeah. So I'm just saying you have my vote if you ever
yeah,
want to decide to do one. I think it would be great. I love looking at
I
your
would
art
love to
collection.
do one of the twice up size original art, just because they're so crazy big. But that stuff
Yeah.
is way recent, and I don't know that people would be quite as. I mean, they kind of want to go. Oh, I want to get the old cool stuff from the '90s when the book was just starting out and fresh. But there's something about the giant originals in a giant size book. You'd be like, this is the biggest artist edition I've ever seen in my life. It's huge.
Just because you're Erik Larsen and you're always up for a challenge and you always want to do fun, different books, just do it. Do the twice up. We'll all buy one. All us fanatics, we'll buy one. We'll support it. It'll be worth it.
The other issue now is that the art's not lettered on the boards anymore. So then it's like, oh, how cool is an artist edition if there's no story to be read?
Letter obscuring the beautiful art. I guess I'm biased just because I love art so much, but I don't think you should worry about that. And if it's really such a freaking problem, just letter it, have it, publish it.
Well, here's the lettering. It's not like I don't have the lettering, but it's.
I'll be interested. Like on it, like artist editions, I'm like staring at I'm like, oh my God, look at that little like noodle right there or something. And it's probably just like someone's arm hair glued to the page or something. I'm sorry, my dog has barked a couple of times.
That's all right. They got to get their own words in there.
For sure. So other than ants and savage dragon, anything else cooking right now or?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. I mean, I had been tossing around the idea of doing some more with North Forest and seeing if I could put something together with that, maybe a mini series, but corralling the cats to put that together is, you know, it's just so exhausting. There's so many little pieces of stuff that's like, oh, how do I do this and do that and do this and do that? It's like, God damn it. Just get your damn book done, for crying out loud.
Yeah. So essentially, I guess to wrap it up, just since we talked a little bit about it earlier, because I always loved reading interviews with artists growing up, you know, wanting to know like their tools and stuff like that, and then realizing later in life that it doesn't matter what the hell kind of pencil Jim Lee uses. I'm never going to be able to draw like him.
Yeah.
But that said, what kind of pencil do you use to this day?
Just a standard, really #2 pencil. They're really just any pencil any school kid would be using, you know, whatever it is, #2.
Okay. And your eraser?
I don't know where it was.
Pink pearl.
It's just one of those white eraser. I could go grab all this stuff. It's just right over there.
Why not? Give a thrill for the kids.
Yeah, everything looks like crap, so you should know that.
Tools are made to be used.
Yeah, they're used and abused in my case. But yeah, like I didn't grab a brush. So I do have a brush that I use. But it's all the same stuff. It's like Winsor Newton Series 7 #3 brush. You know, in terms of pens, I just use your regular nib Hunt 102. You know, in terms of erasers, it's just this Staedtler Mars plastic eraser. There we go. And then
markers.
White out. I just use is that even right side up? I don't even know. Whatever. It's just, they have these these whiteout pens, and when you go real fast, they'll skip a little bit. So it's like, all right, those are cool for interesting effect. And then I'll drag a X-Acto knife through things to chop things up if need be. There's some lettering nibs I'll use for like Kirby dots or what have you. And some lettering ones I'll use for doing some outlines on stuff just to make it, give it a little bit of a different line. Straight lines, usually I'm using Pentel Rolling Writer. It's just a decent enough pen. There's some other markers that I got that are just either, you know, weird Japanese markers that I ran across at some point, or some other skinny ass thing. But it's, you know, it's just whatever I happen to, whatever's in my hand. And the problem is I hold whatever tool it is so ridiculously that it becomes a different tool in my hands than it would be in a normal person's hands. You know, because I'm, you know, when I'm sitting here drawing, you know, whatever, I don't even have something to draw on here. But if I'm sitting here drawing, I'm holding a pencil like that.
Yeah, it's funny because I can't even remember what convention, but a long, long time ago, I had the pleasure of getting a dragon sketch from you, and I just marveled at the way you held your pen.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
I don't know that anyone could do it if they tried.
Yeah, there's as far as I can tell, there's no advantage to it and plenty of disadvantages. So you know, it's like I can draw, because I'm balancing on my middle finger and thumb, I can do a decent circle just by turning the paper around, but that's like my only parlor trick. And it's like there's so many things that I can't do because it's mostly a hand movement instead of an arm movement. So, you know, any kind of long swooping lines are really difficult for me. And so it just ends up that my style is all things that I end up doing to compensate for my inability to do all this other stuff that I'd really like to be able to do. So,
you know, it's funny, but thanks for indulging me. But I guess as you know, it makes you realize that at the end of the day, it's like as an artist, you just have to use whatever works for you.
Yeah, you just whatever it is. And I think with comics in particular, it's like it doesn't matter what it is as long as you get the look that you're trying to get out of it, or a look that you're at least satisfied with. I don't know that I've ever sat down and drawn anything that turned out the way I thought it would.
Yeah,
but you know, as long as when you desert ship, you're happy with it.
I read an interview with Alex Ross once, and he said that his art always looks exactly how he imagined it in his mind. And my initial thought was, fuck you. I was just like, how dare you be like one of the best artists on the planet and have it be perfect in your mind? Because my art never looks anything near like what's in my mind, and it's a lifelong disappointment.
Yeah. That's same here. It's always like occasionally there'll be something where I go, oh, this is way better than I am. I'm not this good, and yet somehow I managed to make this thing which is superior to what I'm capable of doing. But most often it's just a crushing disappointment.
Do you use Zipatone still anymore? I always loved your use of Zipatone in the past.
Occasionally I will. A lot of the Zipatone that I use these days is virtual because, you know, you can do all that stuff in Photoshop. I've also scanned in some of those old Zipatones so it's sort of endless. I can just keep using them online forever. But I've got a drawer that's got a bunch of that stuff still in it. And so occasionally I'll just be like, let me use up some of that crap because Am I just going to die with a drawer full of Zipatone? What's the point of that? Not that I'm planning on dying anytime soon, but
Advice for me, but I just occurred to me with your color experimentation and stuff. It'd be kind of fun if you did like a black light issue of Ant. That would be cool.
I wouldn't even know how to go about doing that. That would be a whole new
Teach you.
learning process. I'd like to do a 3D thing at some point where you have to get out the goggles and put that on.
Ray Zone still alive, isn't he? The one who did all the
yeah, he's not still alive.
He did like every single 3D book that I've ever had was always 3D effects by Ray Zone.
Yeah, you can. I would think it'd be easier to do online than it.
Yeah, one of my friends just did some like 3D story, and it looked pretty legit. I didn't have any 3D glasses on me to test it, but I think he pulled it off. So
yeah, I'll probably screw around with it just because it seems like it'd be fun. But there's these, yeah, it's like they're doing these color 3D things now, which it didn't used to be. It was always like one red lens and one green lens or something. But they're doing these full color ones. It's like, I don't even know how that's done. I can't even wrap my brain around how that would work.
Being a kid, and they did this huge thing where they were going to show the creature from the Black Lagoon in 3D on TV, and you could get 3D glasses from Wendy's to watch it. And I feel like it was like a huge disappointment. Like I don't think it worked very well.
You know what? If you have a chance to see it, somebody did a conversion of the MGM Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland, the whole bit. They converted it into 3D, and it is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. If you ever, especially, we've got like a theater here that would, play old movies and stuff. It was one of those grand old movie theaters in San Francisco in the Castro, and it's just they would put up these huge movies, and they made things into 3D that were never 3 dimensions to begin with. So it's like you're sitting there watching it going, I know that was a flat drawing that they were walking towards. It was a matte painting, and they've made this matte painting have depth. So now it looks like, when they're walking down the yellow brick road, I know that, they're 2 feet away from walking directly into a matte painting. They're just making it look like that road goes on forever. And it's like, oh, that's astounding. It's just, yeah, you can find that thing. It's great. And I've been looking for it ever since. We went to the Castro and saw it. I went there with Janie, my wife, and my kids are like, "Oh, we've seen it before." They didn't want to go, so it was just the two of us, and we just came home just gushing about it. They're like, "Oh, we missed out. I want to go. I want to go." And I've never seen it since. I've never seen it even advertised since. So, but yeah, I mean, if I had the opportunity to see it again, I'd do it. Anyway, I love 3D.
I know. I guess I'll let you go, but I really appreciate you giving me your time. Like,
sure.
Totally awesome.
Thanks for having me, man.
My dog barking and stuff like that. Is there anything you want to tell the audience or people? Anything you want to talk about?
I mean, read all my cool comics.
Yeah,
I'm continuing to do Savage Dragon and Ant, and they're not coming out nearly as fast and furiously as I would like them to. But I'm working on it, man.
That's kind of okay too, because sometimes I feel like it's hard to keep up with monthly comic books. You know what I mean? So when they do come out, they're always great and quality and amazing. And I'm just happy that you still are inspired enough to keep bringing us so much joy in your art and your stories and your characters. And uh, I really do appreciate you as an artist and a creator and an entrepreneur, businessman, visionary. I mean, you definitely, I mean, I
Good
don't mean
word.
to embarrass you, but you definitely are the real deal when it comes to comic book creators. And just congratulations on a pretty amazing career of being able to do what you love. And I think that's very aspirational.
All right. Well, thanks for that.